So one of the key challenges any scientist has to face is how to pick the research questions that they're going to pursue. And there's this term in science called Mesearch, when people investigate themselves. And this can be both a good and a bad thing. And I'd like to just say a couple words about that. So it's very common in the social sciences for people to focus on questions related to their own identity, for example, their own race or ethnicity, their own sexuality, for example, their own social class background. And there's nothing necessarily wrong with that. You know, if you grow up poor and your family is evicted, you know, that might be a feature of the natural world, poverty and eviction, that is worthy of scientific investigation, that you have a powerful connection to and you want to pursue. Or in my case, for example, I grew up with a mother who was terminally ill and was dying my whole childhood. She was diagnosed when I was 6. She died when I was 25. My whole childhood, I lived under the sword of Damocles, wondering when would my mother die. And what was my dissertation about? It was about prognostication and end-of-life care. You know, I was driven to focus my attention on features of the natural world, how doctors make predictions, how doctors care for the seriously ill, by my own personal experience. And this doesn't just happen in the social sciences, like the examples I've given, but also in the physical sciences. So E.O. Wilson tells this incredible story about being a farm boy and becoming obsessed with ants, which were his companions on the farmland where he was. And he's one of the greatest scientists of the 20th century, became obsessed with ants and made all these incredible discoveries. Or people who choose geology because their house was swept away in a flood or destroyed by an earthquake, and they become interested in these features of the physical world. Or people who become interested in animal husbandry, for example, interested in the evolution of, the cultivation of particular traits in animals, and who become interested in evolutionary biology from just witnessing, how their parents breed animals on their farm, for example. So there are many ways in which, as a scientist, your foci of interest are driven by your own life experiences. And there's nothing necessarily wrong with that. In fact, science, I would argue, is about being inquisitive about the world around you. That's a key feature of science. But the problem can come when you are so overly connected, overly cathected with these topics, that you lose your objectivity, that you kind of lose perspective, and you become more of a policy advocate than a real scientist, I would say. Now, the tension is that I want my students, and I have this conversation with this exact conversation I have with my graduate students, I want them to feel connected to their work. I want them to feel a kind of moral solidarity with their work. I want them to feel really engaged and committed, but not so much that it blinds them to the reality of the world. So, you may have grown up with this conviction that things happen for a particular reason, but your purpose as a scientist is not to prove that. Your purpose as a scientist is to investigate that, and you might uncover disproof of your beliefs. So you have to allow for that possibility. It's a difficult balance. You want people to be really invested in their work and committed to their work and feel a connection to their work, but not to the point that they lose their objectivity. I think one of the other risks of Mesearch is that as a scientist, your credibility could come eventually to be doubted. And that in a way, you are needlessly putting yourself in a box and confining yourself instead of benefiting from the full breadth that the science has to offer, the full range of topics. Instead of allowing yourself to go where the world leads you, where your curiosity leads you, you kind of paint yourself into a corner. And I think what I would like to say is that I want scientists to be passionate, but not so much that they surrender their objectivity.